Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, we had one game last night. Ooh, the Lakers. Bad loss for them. And Sam Amick stops by to talk to us about All-Star Game, the fallout, whether the media is too negative around the All-Star Game. I don't know, Wes. I don't know. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S.
Morning.
We're back from All-Star Game. And as we say often on the show, there's a good game every night.
Yes, but...
Welp, folks, that might have been a lie. Last night, we got the Mark Williams Bowl.
Look, we're still coming back from vacation, not a big deal.
We aren't the only ones. Charlotte Hornets were in LA to face the Lakers in a basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
The Hornets won. The Lakers actually, they started the game off. I thought it looked pretty good. And you and I, we were thinking, hey, we might have an easy night. The Lakers, they ought to blow out the Hornets. Especially because Luka now off that minutes restriction. And you think, okay, he's going to maybe show out. He's had a little bit more time to do some rehab. LeBron looks extremely healthy
to
start
looks
the game.
Fine. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the Lakers build a lead and the bottom falls out. And the Hornets go on, what was it, a 21-1 run?
Yeah, 21-1 run to finish that third quarter and eventually take the lead. It was basically a combination of just crazy shot making from the Hornets. And then the Lakers, like you said, bottoming out. Like the turnovers were bizarre for them. Luka for the entire game had a lot of turnovers. I think he ended up with 6 overall. And so 8 assists, 6 turnovers for him. It was sloppy overall for the Lakers as they were trying to move the ball. Still feel like a team that's trying to figure out who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell that one in this. It just felt like they were discombobulated throughout. And so Charlotte took advantage. They're like, hey, you're going to let us get into this basketball game? Sure. Why not? We'll take this win.
I mean, I think a lot of people will look at the score and think it's like 1995. It was 197.
It was awful. This was a brutal game.
Hey, what's going on with the Lakers offense? That's not the issue. They got looks. They just didn't make shots, which, again, they're trying to figure things out. I understand the offensive problems. The defensive problems, though, as there were too many times where LeBron and Luka were both the backline helper. That's a layup every single time. And I got to say, now that we're seeing this on the court, I have to go back to when we thought Mark Williams was going to be a Laker, and we started saying, "Ooh, wait a second. Could the Lakers? No. S. Now that we see it,
man.
Mark Williams would not have been good enough to elevate.
No, Mark Williams would not have been good enough. I don't know if there was a solution to this Lakers defense other than Anthony Davis staying there. That would have been the solution.
And honestly, Anthony Davis maybe should be getting some Defensive Player of the Year buzz.
Just based
watching that game last night.
Yeah, fair enough. No, there were a few possessions, especially in the clutch, where teams tend to, especially teams that are playing small like the Lakers, like they finished out with Dorian Finney-Smith and Jared Vanderbilt. They're trying to pre-switch everything to get LeBron out of actions, get Luka out of actions. There was one possession where they tried to double LaMelo Ball, and Luka is guarding LaMelo, and they double him, but then he doesn't rotate over to get the guy in the corner. Ends up being a wide open 3 for Nick Smith Jr. And so there's little wrinkles like that where you can see their defense falling apart. And so if you are having this switch everything mentality that they're trying to have, you gotta rotate over. You gotta
be in front of the guy. I mean,
exactly.
Think about the clutch layup that basically sealed the deal for the Hornets, the LaMelo layup where he just carves right through the defense. Dorian Finney-Smith is the last guy at the basket, and he's a half second late because he's 6'6". And this is why you want a guy
Mark
who's
Williams
7 feet tall.
in front of you. Exactly.
And so, when that rotation, you can't teach height. And so by just having a taller guy, even, now everything has got to be on a string. But Dorian Finney-Smith, again, people forget this about that Mavs team that went to the Western Conference Finals. I mean, he essentially was doing a very similar job.
Yeah.
But it's a couple years later. And I would argue, having LeBron and Luka out there is a little bit, that's a little bit more work.
Yeah. And you like, I think even in that year with Dallas, they still had some bigs to go to. Like Maxi Kleber was another big that they could go to. And Dwight Powell was another guy, God bless his soul, could still be able to be a guy who could play some minutes for you. This Lakers team is relying on Jackson Hayes, who has been playing well, playing better, but Alex Len does not play the part here.
And 10 minutes. Yeah. 10 minutes, S. No points.
And you can't fault him. This is
one rebound, one foul.
Yeah.
You're a center. One foul in 10 minutes just isn't enough. To quote my good friend Keith Parrish, perhaps try.
Right.
Perhaps try. All right, let's talk about the Luka and LeBron part of this. Again, LeBron just
looked great.
Yeah, he looks awesome. He had a couple of big dunks, hit some deep threes. He and Luka got to hook up a couple of times on some transition stuff. I mean, they are going to make highlights. And I think offensively, this team is going to be humming once the shots start to fall.
Yeah. And I'm not worried about Luka's rust. He just couldn't hit anything tonight. Yeah. And I think part of that is probably the vacation and coming off of 6 weeks of missing games and trying to get your legs under you. There were a couple of possessions where you could see the connection between LeBron and Luka. Obviously, the transition play has been awesome between the two, but there was one time, this was actually the massive dunk that LeBron had on Mark Williams, which is funny out of all things. Imagine going from about to be LeBron's teammate to getting dunked on by LeBron in a week. But Luka was in the post. Yeah. They sent the double team, and then it was a swing. LeBron was one pass away. He just attacks the closeout, goes out and dunk on Mark Williams. So it's easy when those guys are on the floor together. It makes a lot of sense offensively. Defensively, it's a different question.
And again, I don't know what the solution is. The buyout market, you and I kind of kicked the idea around.
Yeah.
In our
Who
pre-show.
Is out there? Right.
Nobody. Yeah. There's no real solution. But that being said, I mean, LeBron and Luka, it's going to be a fun time. Guys, stick around after the break. Sam Amick just hangs out for a while, and he goes pretty deep behind the scenes at All-Star, behind the scenes with Draymond Green.
Yeah.
On his title predictions and everything. So stick around for that. Well, coming out of All-Star break, we're looking ahead to the rest of the season, the push to the playoffs, and we had to call in our national NBA insider, Sam Amick. How's it going, Sam? I hope you had a good All-Star break.
Gentlemen, going great. I just, complained to you off air about All-Star weekend fatigue. So we are recovering, had a good time in San Francisco, and I'm a Bay Area boy, so it was fun to see a city put on a good show, but nice to be with you.
Yeah. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, that's Willow Amick in Sam's lap there,
hanging out,
who is our national dog insider. Giving us all the inside dog scoops.
A lot of dogs on this show. I love it, man. Yeah. We got a lot of dogs in here. Yeah.
All right, Sam. What are you paying attention to coming out of the All-Star break? What's the most interesting thing you picked up? Tell me what's on the top of your mind right now.
I mean, it's hard to get the trade deadline out of my mind. You know what I mean? It was such a wild couple of days. I saw Luka playing his first game in LA before the break. Next week, Dallas is rolling through, LA. So it's not going to be in Dallas, which will be the more emotionally charged reunion game. True. But you do have a reunion game right around the corner. At All-Star weekend, it was really interesting to talk to a lot of people within the league about that trade, whether it's front office folks or other players. So that one is top of mind. I'm also on the trade front. The Warriors go 3-1. With Jimmy Butler, that win over Houston before the break was one that I think we're going to get to this. But, Draymond Green had said after that game that that's the kind of game the Warriors would have lost before. He's obviously feeling fired up about this version of the Warriors. And so I'll get a chance to see them on Friday here in Sacramento as well. But, these new and improved teams where now we get to see if the on paper product looks as good as the actual thing.
Yeah, you mentioned the Warriors. They went 3-1, like you said. And Draymond made headlines when it came to a big declaration for a lot of actually, yeah, he had a lot of comments throughout the weekend, but there was one that jumped out, which was that the Warriors were going to win the championship this year. I know you kind of got a chance to catch up with him as well. How do you feel about that comment? Do you think there's some validity to it? And what did Draymond say when you asked him?
So there's an event on Friday before All-Star Weekend called Tech Summit. Always one of my favorite things to go to. It's honestly a pretty tough list to get on. And the benefit of it is that while the panels are off the record, and they're super interesting panels, and they want the panelists to have the freedom to speak freely off the record. The hallways at this event are kind of a reporter's dream when it comes to owners, executives, agents, players, a lot of former players being out there, and you can just have casual conversation. Sometimes you even get current players who appear to be kind of plotting the next stage of their post-playing career, trying to learn about business and tech and that type of a thing. So I look up, and Draymond is at the event. He spends most of his time chatting with Baron Davis, his podcast buddy, and they're just kind of milling around. And eventually, I decided to go over and say hello to Draymond. At the time, he was talking to a guy named Brandon Schneider, who was the Warriors team president, and just wanted to catch up and get his thoughts on the trade. And when we did that, I mean, the funny part in hindsight is that, obviously I did not know that he would then go on Sunday night at the All-Star game to declare to the world that the Warriors were going to win a title. But to show you how genuine it is and like actually authentic, I think, in terms of his opinion, I literally just said, so what do we think? Like, what do we think about Jimmy and this new look? And the first thing out of his mouth was, oh, like we can win the title. And my favorite part was that, and I wrote this, like, I then had to tactfully figure out like how to not be like, what the hell is wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, and I did say, I was like, are we talking about this season? I didn't know if he thought it was going to just kind of eventually grow into that. And he said, absolutely, absolutely. And you know how he can be extremely confident. So, I mean, I later found out, just to add even more kind of meat to the bone, I talked to Warriors owner Joe Lake about the Draymond interaction while I was at an event with Joe. And it cracked me up because he kind of smiled. He goes, yeah, he told me too. So Draymond has been running around telling, anybody who will listen that the Warriors are legit again. And if nothing else, it certainly makes them compelling down the stretch.
I mean, it's better than acting like you're not. Nobody liked that for the 2 months they did it,
right?
Exactly. It was weird when him and Steph were saying, well, we can't mortgage the future. I understand. You know what I mean? This is much, I'd much rather have him swinging for the fences. There's been a lot of hand wringing, including Draymond, talking about the format of the All-Star game, the state of the league. There's too many threes. Draymond called it boring, which is, I've got my own opinion there, but I want to know, Sam, how you feel about this.
That was Oscar Robertson, by the way.
Well, hey. Yeah. But coming out of All-Star, right, and from talking to everyone around there and the executives, I mean, what would you say, like, the biggest topic for the state of the league is? Like, where are they looking to improve? What are they looking to, expand on? What's the next change for the NBA?
I don't know what the next change is. I feel like more than ever, Adam Silver did his All-Star Weekend press conference where a big focal point was just the state of the game. And so, like, while I don't know what the change is, I can't remember a time when the state of the game was in question so much, where LeBron got a similar question, how do you feel about the state of the game? And everybody, it's one of those things where if everybody's asking, then the answer can't be great, right? Even though a lot of people, and Dave, I think you feel this way, and I, to a large extent, I feel the same way, that today's game is in a great spot. I think Amazing. I think a lot of the things we're talking about here, we should probably, my 2 cents, leave the game alone and just start realizing that the major reason this discussion is happening in the first place, it's just because the environment around the game has changed so much in terms of how people consume games, generational differences when you talk about social media, and the marketing business component of the game. That is what is in question. The reason that Adam Silver wants to pontificate about 10-minute quarters is because a 2-hour game fits more neatly into a certain television streaming time slot. That is a different conversation than what do we think of the players and the teams and the talent and the entertainment value of the game itself. It
does feel like, Sam, though, that part of those, they get wrapped in together, and it's a little bit unfair, style of play stuff that is about the evolution of the sport. And we split hairs over really 4 feet on a difference on a basketball court. I don't know. I think they get a little bit hung up in the 3-point line aspect of this entire thing when they're thinking about what the problems with the game instead of the flow of the game. And I think that the 10-minute quarters at least would be a move in the right direction. So I think I'm on the right track there, like as far as they're thinking.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right on all that. I think that, Kevin Durant, honestly, I know, raising your hands and doing nothing is not the answer, but I did kind of love Kevin's tweet where here's a guy who I think his spirit at the moment is kind of this energy of, we're pretty damn good and the game is in a pretty good place, but everybody keeps complaining all the time.
Yeah. Nobody is happy, right? Everybody
tweeted about that. And, and I don't blame him because the problem is when you try to change too much, I don't know how you guys felt about the All-Star game format being there in person. I want to use that as an example. Okay. A significant change to an NBA event. It's not a 4-point line because it's just an exhibition, but made major changes to the All-Star game.
Yeah.
I was there in person and I'll be honest with you, I stopped caring like 20 minutes in. Like I literally stopped watching.
Well, they stopped caring. They stopped the whole show, Sam. Yeah. We were watching at home and I feel like, again, they had entertainment there. There were things happening. So my assumption was in the building, it didn't feel as bad.
Oh, it felt pretty bad. Yeah. It felt, I was totally disconnected. I'm going to share a quick story that illustrates how disconnected I was. I walked to, whether it was the bathroom or whatever, I walked down press row at one point in the middle of the action. And then when I was coming back, my friend and colleague from the Washington Post, Ben Golliver, was videotaping a moment on the court. And, Ben's got a good social media presence and likes to get the big moments. But I saw him with his phone. And I'll be honest, at first I was like so disinterested that I was like, what is he filming? What the hell could he be filming? There's nothing. Well, it was one of the first games and there was a game-winning dunk that I walked right in front of his camera as he was trying to get the shot. And he kept giving me a hard time about it. He shows the video and it was like just epic timing. And my body literally covers the entire camera, like right when there's a game winning dunk. And I just looked at Ben like, well, who cares? Like, I didn't care about this event. It was too many games, too many players. You look on the court and I forgot who was actually an all-star. So
it felt secondary to everything else they were doing.
The fluff. Yeah.
For sure.
All the fluff.
Well, and by the way, as I shout out media members, friend and colleague Rachel Nichols did a nice job over the weekend. She got all these NBA all-stars on camera to commit to taking part in a one-on-one tournament.
Yeah.
That was, one angle that definitely moves the needle for me, where if you want to get gimmicky, I just think that is that's something that we all can relate to from growing up playing the game.
Unrivaled has had some success with their one-on-one tournament. And
that's how she framed it was, asking guys if they'd seen the Unrivaled thing and whether or not they'd be willing to do it. I think the league probably assumed they wouldn't. In that regard, Rachel was doing the heavy lifting for them and getting them to, give their 2 cents.
Well, I think one issue that you've got is, so one-on-one is more approachable. Right. We've all played one-on-one. We can relate to it. And I think an issue that the NBA has is that the game has become so complex and the media doesn't do a great job on television of explaining the complexity like they do with football. And part of that is function of the sport. You can't stop in the middle of an NBA game to give a breakdown, and nor should you. I think it's much more of a vibes and flow sport anyway. But I want to, talking about the media a little bit, I have a question. I think part of this is perception becoming reality. How much of this is because you have the guys on TV and in the media, they kind of bash the sport. They bash the players. They bash them before the game. They're bashing them during the game. I mean, they had a comedian roasting players during the All-Star game, which is supposed to be a celebration of the sport. And, Sam, you know me pretty well, man. I'm a guy, I find a lot of joy in basketball. I think that's the way to approach it. And I'm not going to knock anybody else's hustle. They're making more money than I do. And a lot of people tie that to meaning you're successful. So what do I know? But aren't they part of this problem?
It feels like they are. But Adam, when asked about this topic, doesn't agree. And Charles Barkley in particular, who is wildly entertaining and obviously a legend. Adam was asked about the TNT crew being critical recently, and he chalked it up to them being like, the old crazy drunk uncle at the Thanksgiving dinner table. I don't think he said the drunk part, by the way. I mean, I guess I added that part in. But it was like you can just kind of shrug at the uncle who is grumpy about different things. And I would tend to think, and I think, Dave, you probably agree and ask as well, like that, it has more of impact than that. Like it's probably not something you should just shirk off and be dismissive about. And I will tell you, because we all have our people in our lives, right, who enjoy the game. Mm-hmm. I'm going to share a text message that I got from that night from my nephew, Jackson, who's a big time NBA fan. Somehow growing up in the Bay, he became a huge OKC fan. And I don't think he'd mind me sharing this. He sent a text and he says, "Disaster of a broadcast. We need people who like basketball to talk about it again."
I like Jackson.
Yeah. He says, "Candace Parker was the only one I could listen to tonight." And so for me, just kind of having the everyman's perspective like that brought it home. And I do think it's something that they need to pay attention to. And not only have they not seemingly very much, but I mean, I've enjoyed covering Draymond as much as anybody, but my God, now you have Barkley 2.0.
He's sour, man.
Yeah. Coming on the backside.
People complain about Reggie Miller, but that guy is having a great time. Every single game
he enjoys the sport. Yes, he absolutely enjoys the sport. It's funny you brought up Jackson, because I think generally there's this conversation about younger audiences and how does the NBA tailor their product to younger audience. And I think if you saw the All-Star game format, you have this situation where it's like you get bite-sized basketball. It's 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here. The attention span is all over the place because you got a performance here, you got all that stuff. So It's interesting, how much they're putting their eggs in the basket of let's try to tailor this thing towards younger people versus we have this audience already. How are we going to create a good broadcast for television? And then that's interesting because you look forward to the new TV rights deal and how they're supposed to kind of approach this situation. We're leaning into streaming more often. So I think that's why these questions come up mostly. It's how they're going to use this next little bit to tailor their audience to the next generation.
I agree. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but man, if I was given my 2 cents, a couple things come to mind. Like I understand, Mr. Beast, by the way, is an extremely influential online personality who my kids had taught me all about, and I knew who he was. So he's integrated into All-Star Weekend. I get it. Like that's eyeballs, that's influence. But I'm going to share the fact that I don't know if you guys have watched this at all yet, but I'm about halfway through Netflix's Court of Gold documentary.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic.
It's incredible.
And the locker room access and the behind the scenes stuff and the storytelling, because they feature, and this relates to the All-Star NBA discussion, they feature legitimately behind the scenes with Team USA, but also with the Canadian team and the Serbian team and the French team. And I'm watching this and thinking to myself, okay, why not lean into the storytelling and the access on All-Star Weekend? You just had an incredible trade deadline, which, by the way, as an example, like Malika Andrews just talked to Kevin Durant about some of the stuff that went on with Phoenix and, the fact that he was nearly traded from the Suns. And he didn't go into great depth, but you had Kevin himself addressing some of the interesting stuff that preceded All-Star Weekend. There's part of me that just says there's got to be a way to shape the programming about All-Star Weekend more about the storylines and the people and through access and through storytelling rather than, the outside the box ideas and the shiny glittery stuff that you think is going to work.
Well, they want to give us celebrities. They have their own celebrities.
Right? Yeah. The athletes, right?
This is it. I want more Kevin Durant on the court. I want them mic'd up. I want their personalities. Even more so, again, All-Star Weekend's supposed to be a celebration of basketball and the NBA. And for some reason it was, I don't know, we got this weird dystopian Mr. Beast shooting contest. Yeah. Beat Damian Lillard for money. That's a weird angle.
Also, it's like there's too many of these conventions now. So you have NBA Cup has its own convention. Summer League has its own convention. NBA All-Star Weekend has its own convention. Every player has a podcast that you can have access to. So that level of access now has been so integrated into our everyday life, whereas it doesn't feel as special anymore to get that sort of access. Core to Gold did a great job of it because this is stuff we've never seen before. And that level of access was something we never saw before.
Yeah. I mean, just to finish that point, I mean, because you guys have watched it, like, my God, watching Joker light up, I believe, Bogdanovic for his defense on Kevin Durant in the game. I'm sure Bogey didn't love that clip being in the doc, but like, man, come on, like, take the good with the bad. That's is perfect. Sports. Yeah, this is the real stuff. And Joker is a guy, you talk about how the NBA has its own celebrities that it needs to lean into. Like, the NBA to this point has not been successful at convincing somebody like Joker to pull the curtain back. We still don't know him. Shout out Mike Singer, my buddy who wrote a whole book about Joker and tried his best and did a fantastic job of telling that tale. But on television, like, you had this 5-second clip where I was like, that is a version of Joker I have never seen before. Exactly. He's lighting a teammate up because he's so competitive. Which we thought he wasn't competitive, right? We always heard that he didn't care about the game. And so that is the stuff, like, you're hitting it on the head, as like, these are your celebs. These are your people, and the fans who are tuning in, they just can't get enough of learning more about who those guys are and how they're wired, how they move with amongst one another rather. So yeah, I think that's the way they should go.
Call me crazy, but I think LeBron James is more famous than Mr. Beast. You know, just
sadly, I don't know if that's true.
That would be I don't know, actually. That's a good question.
Before you get out of here, you want to pick a champ? Now that you've seen the first, what are we calling it? 60% of the season?
66.67%. Yes. There you go.
Picking a champ. Man, I hate this game so much, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with OKC. They're dominant. They're going to be getting Chet Holmgren back. They've got depth. Their defense is just incredible. Again, we talked about the Core to Gold documentary, like, having Shea and Lou Dort, on the same squad and all these long, Jalen Williams just showing out at All-Star Weekend. These dudes who don't seem to care that they're new to the party. You know what I mean? Like, now, I don't know how the NBA marketing folks are going to feel about OKC being on that final stage. But, if I got to pick one, I'll go with the Thunder.
They'll just bring
people in
Mr.
Canada
Beast.
here will love it. Just saying.
Bring in Mr. Beast. It'll be totally fine. Yeah. Sam Amick, thank you very much for hanging out with us. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. For Es Baraheni and Sam Amick, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.